Memoirs of Zjhurlion Zbjurn, take 1. Alright. I'm gonna edit this out. Shut up. These memoirs were written during the 1-month period during the annexation of Zjhurlion. In my time within the walls of Zjhurlion during the Memiors annexation, I've come to realize how small my contributions are to both the Adventurers Guild and maybe even to the very world itself. For much of my life I have dulled my senses and attempted to avoid most conflicts with honeyed words and a flair for the dramatic. It was only with the release of Aarokacora that I suddenly became aware of how small I truly was. Over the course of the last few months I have lost my home, my short tenure with the Adventurers Guild, and perhaps many of the few friendships that I have managed to make for myself. I've learned a harsh lesson that death and the corruption of my mind, and perhaps even my very soul, surrounds me wherever I go. For this reason I am inspired to write about my life, that either upon my death or if I were to go missing, either rebounding into my past addictions or worse, the pyramid's followers have come to claim me. That copies of this missive are to be delivered to the northern city of Elderling. Once there seek the dwarven matron of the local boarding college in the lower district. Her name is Zbjurn. She is my adoptive mother. That's one of the reasons why I abbreviated my name to Zbjurn, to still be associated but not put her in any danger. She will know where to begin. I guess there's any great stories, the beginning, I suppose. I do not know of my birth parents. Aarokacora of the Gorgon Mountains. The words escape me. It is my belief that when I was born with my deformities, my hands and its strange tentacles, and of course the ever-present third eye that has both intrigued and haunted me my entire life. Perhaps they simply saw them and tossed me from the nest, or I do not know. I have made no real attempt to find them or to track them down, for if they abandoned me, then so be it. And if they did not, I would not want to ingratiate them with knowing that their son is, well, like me. But I would have died in the mountains if not for my foster mother, Brigitte. I do not know to this day what she saw in me. I was rather Aarokacora hashlings are not exactly the cutest of children, but perhaps she saw something in me that, well, maybe she was just a bitter of heart, but you wouldn't know it if you spoke to her. She took me to Wundernad, she raised me as her own. I only found out later that one of the main reasons she did this is because she had lost her biological son, Venor, to the forces of the Bone Merchant. Something that has a deep-seated hatred of all things infernal in her, even the unfortunate tiefling that tries to enter the lower districts of Erdenad. She was very proud of me as a as a fledgling. I guess it's when my feathers came in that she always told me, Zjhurlion, you don't have, if you had some face, but your plumage is vibrant, white, gold, purple, blue, and I guess I inspired her to take up dance. I was a flamboyant lad. It's funny, when she tried to give me dance lessons, I learned how to fly before I learned how to dance properly. I did a few too many enthusiastic twirls and nearly cast myself off the stage. But instinct kicked in, I unfurled my wings and I glided down safely. And then, as the shock of what happened got over me, I flexed my wings and flew back onto the stage. Oh, she was so proud of me. But that's when the nightmares started to happen. Visions of three-eyed monsters and what I should do. I should go underground. It was through these influences that I began to study. I always found studying boring, but a piece of me that I did not know craved knowledge of every kind. And well, I would have been smarter if the nightmares didn't affect me so. I looked for any way to avoid them. The occasional zinger drink, the occasional meditation, eventually nothing worked. The sleep always came, the nightmares became worse and worse. But then I guess I lost myself to exhaustion and I traveled to the worst parts of the lower district, and that is where I someone who I both curse and bless every day, a peddler of exotic medications by the name of Faulkner. He saw me in my dreaded state and offered me a easy out, so to speak. It was dust made from, I assumed, Fae, but I do not know. The ingredients didn't matter. It was the effects that I needed. They invigorated me. They kept me awake. And when I did sleep, I found that the nightmares did not come because of how muddled my mind was. And I spiraled as any addict did. I think that my creator did not appreciate this much, and the need for knowledge expanded to not just academics or books. I became, during a very bad trip I had one day, everything looked demonic, everything was swirling, my head was swimming, and I passed along I did not know it at the time, but he was a sorcerer of type. He approached me, checked on me, asking if I was okay, and through my muddled, trippy mind, I thought he was one of the beings from my nightmares, and I attacked him. We thankfully were again in the darker parts of the lower district, and I ate his bread, and as disturbing as it was, I also, I guess due to my physiology, or perhaps as a gift of the pyramid, I gained the sorcerer's knowledge. I learned how to manipulate my own innate magic, and it was a harrowing experience. As soon as I came down, I realized I killed a man, and I could not go back home because I did not know if my mother would take me back. If I did not know, so I fled the city. I followed the mountain south. I guess the fear and the nightmares, they led me to leave the country entirely, and I found myself in, I guess, the final years of Lond. Eventually I tried to get clean. I say that as something as noble, like I tried to get clean, but more like I could no longer afford my addictions, and I sought different ways to make money in the south. I tried to use the things my mother taught me, dance, song. When I had left Vronad, I brought with me only my mother's viol that she gave me. She always liked my songs, and many things that I claimed were just important, but I pawned them all the same for my drug money. But after a while, I ran out of that funds and tried to do all sorts of things. Petal paintings, petal songs. But there's only so much you could do being a strange, three-eyed birdman in the south, where many people saw this as even weirder than I already was. Eventually, during a bad aching scene, after the withdrawals kicked in and caused me to I do not want to go into details here, but it was a bad time. I was almost, the need for knowledge tried to kick in many times, and I almost attacked more people, but thankfully I met one of my greatest friends. He was the proprietor of the Adventurers Guild in the what was formerly known as the Wall, Iron Wall, outside of the No Man's Land, where battles were raging during the Maiorian expanse before it got, well, it was all, war is always bad, but they had yet to break the line. My friend here, he had the same, I guess, insight as my mother, and he took me into the guild, cleaned me up, gave me purpose. I started to just do, at first it was simple things. I could fly, and I could fly over the No Man's Land, try and stay out of any crossbow range or spells, and just deliver messages or medicines, simple things. And I did this for many months. But after a while, I got good at talking to people. I took the lessons of my mother to heart, and I found myself a good speaker here. I wouldn't go so far to say I was a good politician or ambassador, but I knew how to talk to people. I knew how to reach out to them and make them see reason, or at the very least entertain them enough to, you know, chill the fuck out. But what this would come to mark a very confusing moment of my life. I was chosen, along with a few others, to seek an audience with the Memiors of Zjhurlion as not exactly a truce or to seek allies with the vampires, but more of a non-aggression pact, as it were. To maybe this sounds entirely it sounds dirtier than it should, but to stay away from Iron Wall and seek their hunts more north. Yeah, that sounds bad. That sounds very bad. But it was desperate times, I guess, for Voland. I do not even know why, but I expected I have heard the stories of the vampires, and I expected them to be dour and leaden-hearted and quite apathetic to our situation, or to not even humor us and simply attack us when we arrived. But to my pleasant surprise, they were, well, at least the ones that were not feral outside the city. The nobility, at least that's what they claimed they were most accommodating. They welcomed us warmly, and we were even granted an audience. What was her name? Yes, how could I forget? Aarokacora. She, the vampire queen of the citadel, let's say. She was initially bored with the original ambassador that came with us, but when I, put my bardic skills to the test, and also being unique as I was, she took a liking to me I did not expect. We had plenty of a conversation, and well, I know it was probably word service, and she was simply acknowledging maybe every other word I said, or simply manipulating me in a way. I can almost say we were on friendly terms, but you know, she is vampire and I am elderling, so I do not know the extent of how far this friendship might have gotten, but unfortunately I had been without the dust for a long time, and the travel was long. And the ferals, they attacked me a few times, but I managed to be free of the vampirism. But the anemia, the exhaustion, and everything combined eventually took its toll, and I fell asleep. And this time I saw this nightmare was far more vivid, far more forceful, far more prophetic in a way. The three eyes stared at me and dragged me through the fields of Niverwold and past Sigd and all the way to the very western edge of the continent and to the ruins, and I saw buried there a great hungry serpent. It was only after the effect that I found out that it was Karkaros, another elderman, and this nightmare, this prophecy, it was telling me to stop this, to stop what was going on, and I only realized what was happening when I had to cut my relation short and fly west. That is when I met the other members of the Adventurers Guild. Though these were more Sigd than the animal, but they seemed pretty enough. There was Toby, who I did not really get along well with, because they were a former addict as well, and I think we triggered each other, I guess. There was fucking Moksha, who I connected with very easily. She was a free-spirited, she liked to drink, she liked to party. It was a very, very sweet friendship, though. The times have changed. It was before I knew who she was and where her allegiance lay, but that is neither here nor there. Then there was Aster. She's kind enough. She helped us out of many things, but we have not spoken much. She has her eyes set on Moksha, for probably obvious reasons, but probably it is not for my place to question. Then that first meeting was... It was a fucking train wreck, I will not lie to you. It's immediately attacked by eldritch abominations that we managed to fight back, but they managed to kill one of the crew, and the captain, clearly emotional, kicked us off at the nearest port and begged that we'd never meet each other again, which harsh but understandable. But that's when we reached the ruins and delved into its depths, fighting more of the elder things they assumed were in league with Karkaros, but that's I do not deem to see what drives such things. At the bottom we found an unfortunate soul who had been corrupted by the Old One's machinations and attempted to awaken the beast to its full might. We had to, unfortunately, kill them, and in the process another of us stayed behind to stave off the beast, and we unfortunately had to flee. This did not feel like a victory, and I realized this was only the first Pyrrhic victory that we would have. Afterwards we mourned the losses and returned to Zjhurlion for a while before we learned of Toby's affliction and their deep-seated past. And unfortunately, my expertise came back with the vampires, came back into fruition as there was a vampire problem within Zjhurlion itself. We managed to clear out some. We cleared the name of one of Toby's old associates, and with this we figured out that this was merely a splinter force of a stronger vampire group that lives within the Underdark, and in order to stow the flow of the vampire attacks and also to protect our own vampire friend, we ventured into the Underdark. I did not like being underground. Being a bird, an Aarokacora, I am at my most peaceful when I am able to fly among the stars and the clouds. Being underground was stressful. Not only because of me being what I am, but of my nightmares. More than half of them had me dragged on the ground into a great sepulchre where the 30-eyed one stared at me into my very soul, and even then I felt so much pain, not physical but more mental and spiritual, being down there, that I unfortunately felt that I gave very little assistance to the goings on in the Underdark. I was too distracted with my own anguish. But we managed to, and in a way it was even worse when she came to me. She was a tiefling, one that, again, due to my mother's upbringing and also the thing I did not trust immediately. She was a tiefling, but she also had 3 eyes, just like me. There was a connection there, but it did not feel natural. I was curious. I've always been curious about my darker lineage, but just the feeling of fear, the all-consuming dread that I felt down there in the dark, that I had to rebuke her. I had to not straight up refuse her friendship or her guidance, but avoid her like a plague. But I digress. Once down there, we were guided into the labyrinth of an beholder. Just being in that maze, I felt so very close to the pyramid that I felt the way Toby spoke hatred to this labyrinth. Just The all-consuming dread and gnawing frustration pulled at my very mind. But we managed to speak calmly to the beholder, and with it, and with our limited friends' assistance, we managed to hunt down the vampire group's lair and routed them. Slayed the father, so as he called himself, and scattered the rest to the wide reaches of the Underdark. This is where Toby and our vampire friend decided to stay behind to make sure that the remnants of this group did not attack anyone else or made their way northward. Not northward, above ground. We said our goodbyes and we finally made our way above ground. It was, oh, the feeling feeling my skull being pressed in on all sides, the relief of feeling fresh air and finally being able to fly freely was invigorating. We unfortunately found ourselves farther south than we realized and had to travel the widest breadth of the southern continent, the desert. I did not like it very much. I'm a northern boy, and I am more comfortable with the mountain air than the dry desert. Though the sand felt nice in my feathers, but not in my robes. That I did not like so much. But our turn is Moksha in her own way again. It seemed to be a theme at this point. Got herself cursed and nearly attacked us, but we had to restrain her, and along the way we met two individuals that I would like to say are very good friends, Calitrix and Mia, who seemed very soft-spoken, but appeared to be quite a good friend to me in recent times. With their help, we managed to cure Moksha of her memory loss and her fulfillment, and we made our way to what I assumed was the capital of the Zjhurlion. It was here that Steropi revealed to us that her family was imprisoned there at the Great Tower. And this is where things got very, very wrong. A few of us, managed to break away from the group and managed to make our way past the no man's land of the bottom of the tower and the great disgusting creatures that live there, and made our way into the prison surprisingly easily. And we managed to acquire guard uniforms, and well, at least I did, and made our way into fuck, edit that out. We managed to make our way into the the yard of the prison, and we discovered Esteropi's, well, at least a few of Esteropi's family, and several other colorful individuals who were quite, well, I tried to stay out of prison myself. Unfortunately, Moksha, being Moksha, immediately picked a fight with the gods and was arrested along with Asterope and others. The ones who managed to play our parts and stay out of trouble were myself and Exilia. We managed to ingratiate ourselves with the prison guard and managed to set up plans upon plans, but unfortunately other plans were set in motion that we had not been privy to prior to our entry into the prison. Moksha and others got in contact with the Maiardian spies, and with their unneeded assistance got pardons for Asterope's family. However, we were then bound into contracts with the Maiardian Zeitgeist, and we had to return to Zjhurlion and remove its king. I was okay with this for the briefest moments, because the king was obviously corrupt and there was signs of racism, poverty and starvation everywhere in Zjhurlion. It was needed, though I did not enjoy it. We found, through getting rid of one of the most blatant of the leaders that were responsible for the acts of racism and arson against the lower slums, which ingratiated ourselves and many people of Zjhurlion once our reputation spread. And it was through this that I and others, we couldn't just simply decapitate the king, otherwise the power vacuum enough would be, this would spell the end for everyone, especially with Maiard at the gates. So we came to an agreement. We had to find the more powerful, the more charismatic and the more open-minded of the Zjhurlion populace that could come together as a council to help lead the remnants of Zjhurlion and negotiate things. I did not know this until halfway through our recruitment of the several leaders of Zjhurlion. Moksha was a fucking narc the entire time. She was of Maiardian nobility, and her mother was a general, and she blatantly, rudely said that everyone was going to die. Said that what we were doing was a waste of time. Up until this point, Moksha was a very good friend. This is where things turned for me. I understand that she was keeping it real, so to speak, but she clearly did not care for, well, at least that is true to say. I know she cared, but she clearly was on the side of my yard, and if when my yard came to claim the city and put most of the swords, she would be standing right next to her mother, and would have little to do with the council that we were trying to make. This revelation did not sit well with me at all. At all. But we persevered. We gathered up the leaders of the academic ward, the medical ward, the temple ward, even some of the gangs, and even some of the guard. And with the stage set, we did what needed to be done. We broke into the castle and we killed many men that were simply doing their job. We killed the prince, who was probably the most noble soul, only held back by the system man that was ruled by his father. He was honorable, and he died honorably, if stupidly dependent on who you ask. And then we had to convince the princess to abandon all things, and she barely managed to get away. Then, without any sense of honor or enjoyment or even clarity, we just killed the king, beheaded him on the spot, and within barely a few hours the gates were open in my yard, stormed in, and did what the Mayardians do. And now we are here. They thankfully were open to the idea of our council and did not immediately kill them as traitors or treason. We did not manage to save many, but we kept damage control to at an intermediate level. And this is why I write. I do not know what waits for me in the future. I do not think that I can be friends with Moksha ever again. I do not know what to do, honestly. With the Mayardian takeover, and I find myself, truthfully, though I was welcome to the Sigden branch of the Adventurers Guild, I feel no love for it. I do my best to help the people, but it is a very confusing time for me. And I do not know what lies in wait for me, but as stated above, if I were to die, or if I go missing, or if I become not myself, deliver this to Vadrunad, to Brigita Zjhurlion, and tell her that I am sorry. Tell her that her boy is trying his best, and that I hope that she can be proud of me. Signed, Zjhurlion Zbjurn.